Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I'm going to share with you the YA dystopian I read during the past month. This is part of my I've Never Read series where I am trying out different authors and genres, etc. that I've never read before. And I have to say overall that I really loved this reading experience, so I am going to talk about the books that I read. So the first book that I read was The Mayor of Thieves by Cherie, Dimaline, and this is part dystopian, part post-apocalyptic. It is set in a Canada that is post-climate crisis, and for some reason people have lost the ability to dream, which causes them to kind of go mad in a way that is except for Indigenous people. They retain the ability to dream, and it is somehow linked with their bone marrow. So the government goes and repurposes the old residential schools and uses them as sort of like laboratories, I want to say, where they round up Indigenous people and bring them to these places to extract their bone marrow. And perhaps commit other atrocities. We're not sure, as we're never shown during the course of this book, inside these centers. The story follows Frenchie, a teenage Métis boy who finds a group of other Indigenous people who have formed like a community or a family of sorts, and they are all heading north where they think they will be safe, and all the while trying to avoid the recruiters who are the government agents who come to seize Indigenous people and bring them back to the those centers to collect their bone marrow. So the whole book is a pretty obvious analogy to the residential school system in Canada, where Indigenous children were separated from their families and brought to these schools where they were horribly abused and their culture was taken from them. And it's essentially that story, but with the supernatural type twist of the bone marrow and the dreaming. Now, what I thought was done really well was the exploration of different themes. So the author's exploration of community and what a community means and how we are shaped by our community. And also the loss of culture and the reclaiming of culture. Vulnerability and resilience, just to name a few. What I thought the book was lacking was its length. So it's not a very long book, and I think because of that it suffered, at least for me, in some of its world building. I felt like there wasn't enough time to really flesh out the story. So as we're following this community, this family, essentially, of people trying to get north, there wasn't really time for them to do a lot of different things. I felt it was very samey, with a lot of traveling and then camping and then traveling and then camping. So I just feel like we were in the forest the whole time. And, you know, occasionally they would bump into other people and try to decide if those people could be trusted, because obviously their lives are on the line. And so I feel like I just needed a bit more book to really build upon the world and offer a little bit more character development. So overall, I think it was a really interesting read, and I gave it like a 3.5 stars. So the next book that I read was The Bells by Dhonielle Clayton, and this book is beautiful and grotesque. So this is a dystopian fantasy in a world called Orléans. There's a lot of like French words and phrases, and I think it kind of hints at that whole like French opulence, French aristocracy type of vibe. So in Orléans, people are born gray, literally. They don't really have color to their skin. Their hair is very like washed out and has the texture of like straw, and their eyes are red. And these people are called the gris, and that's how people are born, except for the Bells. So the Bells are girls who are born more like people in our own world, where they have different skin complexions, different skin colors, different hair colors and hair textures, different colored eyes, different body shapes. Some of them are curvy, some of them are slender. And so they are the only ones born beautiful in this world. And the Bells have this like supernatural ability to transform the greed, to transform the other people, and to make them beautiful, so they can like reshape bodies. They can change skin color and eye color and hair color and texture, lengthen hair, shorten hair. They can even like reset bones and change your like bone structures, so really like change your face, make your nose smaller or wider or whatever. They can transform people. And the transformations are temporary, so people have to keep coming back to the Bell salons every however long it is, month or whatever, to keep getting their beauty treatments. So the Bells are really brought up from infancy. They're trained to work these salons and to perform these beauty treatments. And it is seen as this great honor that they have this role, that they were basically bestowed with the gifts of the goddess of beauty to help the people of Orleans become beautiful. And our main character, Camellia, she also feels this way, that it is a great honor to be a Belle. Camellia wants to be the favorite, which is the Belle that is chosen to run the salon in the palace and basically perform the beauty treatments for royalty and the nobility. But over the course of the novel, the Bells, Camellia and her other sister Bells, they realize that truths were withheld from them about the nature of the Bells and their abilities, about the salons, and about really the structure of their whole system and how their whole world is run. So this was clearly a huge commentary on the beauty industry and beauty as commodity, even some commentary on that whole idea of pain is beauty. So these beauty treatments, these transformations are actually quite painful, and the people have to be partially sedated in order to have the beauty treatments. And there's commentary on basically everything to do with beauty. Makeup and dieting and cosmetic surgery. I'm sure you could all pull some parallels from this book. My favorite part of this book was 100% the world building. I thought the world building was just phenomenal. It was so lush and vivid, and she really describes like smells. It was just very, a very sensory reading experience. And think of things like taffeta and velvet and tulle and satin. Think delicate pastries and tea and rosewater and flowers and jewels and everything that is opulent. And you'll get a sense of what the world was like. That, but mixed with this like seedy underbelly of a dystopian world. My only criticism of this book is in the main character, Camellia. I felt like her character wasn't really sorted out, and her actions I found quite inconsistent. So I feel like the author couldn't decide whether she was this kind of like driven girl who was dead set on being the favorite and was going to do whatever she could to be the best Belle around, or if she was a hard-headed, rebellious girl who's going to break all the rules. Like, I felt like she didn't really fall on either side of that, and I found that a little confusing about her character. It's a minor quibble, I would say, because I did really love this book. I initially gave it a 4.5, mostly because I found the ending quite unsatisfactory, and then I looked it up and realized that it's part of a series. So I have bumped this up to 5 because I feel like I can forgive some cliffhangery, like not quite answering questions type of ending if there's going to be a sequel. So I am definitely going to read the sequel because I really enjoyed this. I don't think it'd be everyone's cup of tea, but if you are someone who really enjoys great world building, then I think you would definitely like this a lot. The Next book that I read is Legend by Marie Lu. Actually, I didn't read this, I DNF'd it. But this is set in a place called the Republic, which is basically constantly at war with like surrounding countries called colonies. And there's also some sort of plague, and only certain people seem to have access to treatment or medication. We follow two teenage protagonists, the first being June, who is a gifted student who ends up being offered this spot, this coveted spot at a university or academy of sorts, where they train people to go into the military, which is what gifted people do in the society, is they join the military. She's kind of like a rising star in the Republic. And then the other half of the novel kind of flips back and forth from point of view. The other half of the novel follows Day, who has grown up in extreme poverty. His family kind of lives in like the slums, I guess, and he is on the run from the government, and he ends up killing June's brother as he being Day, is trying to steal medication, like plague medication, from a hospital to take to his family who need it. That's more or less where I DNF'd the book. I think that was probably around page 50 or so. I know just from reading the blurbs and whatnot that June seeks revenge, or is going after Day to seek justice. I'm assuming she means to kill him, most likely. And but of course, being a dystopian, I am sure they team up and learn things, some secrets about the Republic. But I didn't get that far. I can't really point my finger to anything. Was the writing bad? No. Was there some awful part of the book that was problematic? No. I can't say that this book is bad. For whatever reason, I just wasn't feeling it. So that was a DNF. And the last book that I read, and this has been a long time coming, was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I've been wanting to read this since it came out, basically. But I just didn't, because I figured, oh, I'm too old for YA. I was kind of that kind of person. I am way less judgmental now about different genres of books. But even then, I kind of had an inkling like, oh, that sounds interesting. But I just never picked it up. And I finally got over myself and I read it, and it was everything I hoped it would be. So I'm not going to talk too much about the plot, because I think most people are aware, but I'll go over it quickly and spend more time actually just talking about what I thought of it. But The Hunger Games is set in this kind of like future North America, this country called Panem. It is run by a corrupt government called the Capital, and then there are these like outlying districts, 12 districts, whose citizens live in varying levels of poverty. Most of them live in poverty. And there's a lot of hunger and starvation, and it's just an awful place. Clearly, it's dystopian. So every year, the capital chooses two children, ages 12 to 18, a boy and a girl, from each district to compete in the Hunger Games. Children are put basically into a death arena, given access to weapons, and only one victor is crowned at the end of it. And this is kind of like the capital's retaliation for a rebellion of the districts against the capital from like 75 years previously. Yeah, because I think we're like the 74th annual Hunger Games in this book. So we follow Katniss as she volunteers to compete in the games in order to save her sister, who was actually randomly chosen. And she is joined by another boy from her district called Peeta, and Peeta had previously shown her kindness when she and her family were starving. He like throws her a loaf of bread. And so she has kind of like mixed feelings about having to compete against this kind boy. And then also, as they go into the games, he admits on live television that he is in love with her. So I think it goes without saying that this is definitely a more plot-driven type of book, which I am fine with. I tend to be kind of like 50-50 split on whether or not I enjoy books that are more character-driven or more plot-driven. This is definitely more plot-driven, but I will say that I thought the characters were quite well done. I didn't feel like any of the characters were flat or were, I felt like they had enough substance. But what I liked most in this book, again, was the world building and also the plot, the gruesome plot of children having to fight to the death. So there's just something clearly more horrific about children in a dystopian, like as compared to an adult dystopian. Children being involved in this like violent dystopian society, which is also, in my opinion, a lot of times much more interesting, because I guess I'm just that messed up kind of person. But I think it's interesting to have a book explore like corrupt governments or corrupt systems through a lens of childhood or adolescence. I think there's something interesting about that. And in many ways, I think it's just more interesting to hear that perspective in dystopians sometimes than adults, because the adults are part of the corrupt government and they're the people who have set up and maintained that system. Another thing I found really interesting about this book is you can be really horrified by what you're reading, but because it's so suspenseful and so exciting, Suzanne Collins really should teach a masterclass on pacing, because it's so exciting, like you're excited reading it, and then there's this thing where you realize like, oh no, I shouldn't be excited. Like basically you're no better than the citizens of the Capitol who were tuning into this child death match for entertainment. And so I felt there was kind of like a little bit of like a meta aspect, at least for me. I don't read a lot of YA in general just because the storylines and the issues that teenagers deal with in those books are not issues that I find very compelling, especially when they relate to like relationships, because I'm just in a point in my life where I don't relate to that, to those specific issues anymore. But have a relationship and throw a battle arena into the mix and I'm there. I found like this really made the kind of like confused relationship between Katniss and Peeta more bearable, more than bearable, more than palatable. It made it interesting, because can Katniss trust Peeta when he says that he loves her, he has feelings for her? And by trust, I mean like trust him potentially with her life. Or is this just a star-crossed lovers narrative that Peeta has constructed in order to gain sympathy and gain sponsors who will send him supplies when he's in the arena? Or maybe he's made it up so that Katniss will help him in the arena and so that he'll be able to win because she won't be actively trying to kill him. So you really understand Katniss's utter confusion, whereas with other YAs where the kind of whole like, oh, do they or do they not like me? It seems a little bit, is trite the right word, but I think you know what I mean. Whereas here you get her utter confusion. And like I said, I had watched the movie. I don't remember actually a lot of the movie because I think it's been a while, and I might have been like half falling asleep when I was watching it. But something that I think you don't get as much in the movie. I think the movie was well done, but is that whole inner monologue. And obviously you can't do that easily in a movie. Otherwise it's just like expository dialogue that someone has to like spew by talking to someone else. And it doesn't seem as authentic a lot of times. But by reading the book, I felt like I got kind of more Katniss's motivations and like what she was thinking in the games and why she was making certain decisions that if you're watching the movie might seem like, oh, why is she running there? Or why is she doing that? Like she should run the other way. But then when you hear her thought process, you realize her strategy and like why she had to do what she had to do. So that I thought was a nice little extra bonus in reading this, was kind of getting the inner workings of our main character. It was a wild ride. I gave it 5 stars. Is it full of nuance? Is it mind-blowing? No, it was just fun. This was a fun and horrific read at the same time. What can I say? So those were all of the YA dystopian books that I read during September. Please let me know if you've read any of these, and if you have, which one was your favorite, or if you liked it or didn't like it. I would love to have a chat with you in the comments below about YA dystopian or dystopian in general. It's one of my favorite genres. Anyway, as always, thanks everyone so much for watching. I hope you're doing well, and we will chat soon. Take care.